Hi Britlet students. So we're going to look at another piece of writing from the famous Canterbury Tale paper, and I want to discuss in this paper a little bit of agreement, a little bit of grammar, some awkward sentences. So let's first look at this one here. We highlight it and then we will talk about it. It says, when one thinks of the characteristics of a knight, one would say that they're strong, chivalrous, loyal, and great leaders. Okay, so if we're looking at this sentence, there are a few mistakes in here. When one thinks of the characteristics of a knight, okay, so a is one knight. Okay, so looking at the rest of this sentence, we move to they are strong. Okay, if you're talking about a knight and then you reference they, you have a lack of agreement there. You have to use he or a singular version of how you want to say a knight. You can't use they or they are because you're referring to a singular knight, a knight. Okay, so let's look at another item here a little bit further down. So if we have this sentence here, Chaucer describes the knight as being well spoken about anything with the utmost relevance. Now you have a citation there which implies it is a paraphrase. Period. Which means anything he says to someone isn't thought about twice or looked over upon. Okay, so there's a few things that maybe we would say are wrong with this sentence. Number one, we're looking at details. I have the slash mark here because there should be a space between a last word and the in-text citation. So of course there'd be a space there. This sentence is awkwardly written. Chaucer describes the knight as being well spoken about anything with the utmost reverence. Okay, you would have to take that phrase and revise it. It's a little awkward sounding. Then she goes on to say, with a capital letter signifying another complete sentence, which means anything he says to someone isn't thought about twice or looked over upon. Again, there are a few things incorrect about this sentence. Number one, it is not a sentence. It is a fragment. Number two, there is a contraction. You cannot have contractions in formal writing. And again, it is an awkward phrase. You cannot use that. You'd have to probably join it with the previous sentence with a little bit of revision in the wording. Lastly, if we look at this last sentence here, I will read it to you. It's very similar to what I just showed you. He is illustrated to be very honorable and one to possess great manners, period, which is greatly needed by a knight to fulfill his chivalric duties. All right. I'm sure you heard it said in my reading of it. It is a very awkward sentence. He is illustrated to be very honorable and one to possess great manners. Now, this here is a fine sentence. It's cited. It has the correct items in it, although you don't need that there. But once we start a capital which, and then we don't have a complete sentence, that becomes a problem. Which is greatly needed. Obviously, there's a mistake there. Double word. By a knight to fulfill his chivalric duties. You'd have to combine that with the previous sentence, or you would have to create this item here as its own sentence, adding in another subject, verb, something to make it more complete. Lastly, let's look up here a little bit. Number one, although the knight's appearance. So we have knight's appearance. There was no apostrophe. When you're talking about possession, you need apostrophes. It belongs to it. The appearance belongs to the knight, so it's an apostrophe S. And then again, I believe this is in one of the other videos, when you have an item like this, the comma and or period, depending on which one you're using, always goes inside the quote marks. It is a rule. Just memorize it, okay?